Are you ready to make the most out of your October? Listen as Tony Peterson talks about how to e-scout efficiently in October for bucks all across the country. Some really great insight in this. If you guys enjoy the conversation, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Here we go.
It's mid-October. We'll call it the quote unquote October lull. And you are headed to, I don't know, think of a state. You're headed to Kentucky, and you're going to be in the Daniel Boone National Forest. So big woods, in hill country, some steep topography. You're doing your digital scouting. What are you looking for? Is it water? Is it food, diversity, edge cover? What's the very first thing that you're dropping a pin on if you're headed to the Boone in mid-October?
Well, when you're talking a big wood scenario like that, a lot of hills, I would probably start right off the bat with access first. Because if everything, you kind of got that mono habitat. Like I run into this in northern Wisconsin a lot. When you scroll over that with like on X, like it's a much heavier lift than a lot of ag country and western stuff, because you're like, everything looks the same. So then, you're like, okay, well, where do I start? And now, do I have 2 square miles or do I have 20? Like how do I divide this down into something that's like, okay, I'm just gonna take these 2 sections and I'm gonna start here. And so it's like, well, how do I get in? Right here. Here's how everybody gets in. So what's within that couple sections that's gonna start to get my interest? And if you're talking October down there, again, you're talking water. If you can find some surface water in there or a creek or something, it's like, okay, now I've got something to start with, because you might be dealing with hard mass down there. Like you might have a real scattered, not super dense deer population. And so you're like, okay, water would concentrate them if I can find it. And if not, it's like, okay, well, maybe I just got to pick this access point, and I like this hillside because it's real benchy, or I like this big valley because it looks like it has maybe like some soft edges in there, or like maybe where some browse meets the hardwoods or something. And then you're going to go, my e-scouting isn't as valuable in this kind of scenario. So I got starting points here, here, and here. And when I get there, I'm going in and I'm looking, because that's like an in the moment thing. And, if you find that acorn pattern or whatever, it's like, okay, if this is hopping, it's over. Now we know what to do. Or because it's mid-October, you start getting in there and you're like, I'm not finding this sign of mass, but I'm finding big scrapes there. Like I can smell them, and I'm starting to see these cluster rubs, and I'm going, okay, even though all this land looks the same, there's a reason this sign is here. And just like, that makes it sound really easy. Like you could do that and walk into 5 spots and not see any sign, but that's, like you're eliminating dead water, like they say when you're fishing. Like, okay, this spot, no good. And you start to run patterns too in that stuff, because that big woods hunting is hard. It just is. It's a different thing. Whatever those deer give you for fresh sign or any sightings or whatever you jump them, all of that stuff is like, okay, where's the pattern? Like why? Like why was he bedded there? Or why are those rubs there? Why is there this just one community looking scrape here in the bottom of this valley? Like where are they coming from? Like why communication hub here? And you start asking yourself that and like going, okay, now I can go back to my e-scouting and look at the next 2 sections over and say, the top of this ridge that had this exposure had awesome browse on it, and they were bedded there. And you look and you're like, there's another one a mile away. Then you start getting into something. We're making it sound easy. Like it can be a frustrating mess, man.
Yeah, that whole scenario, mid-October, big woods, low deer density, it is not a freaking easy task to break down. Whether you're e-scouting with boots on the ground, it is difficult. 99% of the time you're gonna fail. And I think going into that, you just gotta have that be able to accept that failure and have the mentality like you just have to keep going. But I think the one really, really valuable point that you mentioned is being able to have some type of sign, encounter, sighting, some type of tip that there's deer in a certain area, whether they're using a certain type of habitat or certain terrain feature, and then being able to replicate that in other areas on your map. I think that is so freaking valuable. And there's times that I've done it myself where something happens, I bump a buck or I have an encounter and I totally screwed up, right? And I get so excited and fixated on chasing maybe that one specific deer. We do a lot of that crazy stuff here. And I forget about, okay, well, maybe I can look at my map at 2 ridges over. Maybe it's only a few hundred acres from where I had that encounter, and there's a replication of that specific terrain feature. Maybe it's a thermal hub. There's a thermal hub here, another one 3 ridges over. A lot of times I don't, then that passes, not to just go over there and check it out, see what's there.
Well, you brought up a really good point there too about, hunting deer versus hunting big bucks. Like, find where deer concentrations are. Like, man, I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, and you make this on your home farm, you make this when you travel 7 states over and go hunt, is you go in and you're like, where do the 150 inchers live? And it's like, like now you're sprinting and you don't know how to crawl yet. Like, go find, and this is like, if you talk Iowa versus, Kentucky big woods, or, northern Wisconsin big woods, if you go into Iowa, you're going to find a deer concentration everywhere. If there's timber, there's going to be deer, right? So then you can go, okay, I'm going to start looking for what big bucks are going to leave for me. But a lot of places with lower deer density and not that kind of cut and dried bed to food to bed type of terrain, just finding where deer are, just like the elk. It's such a good starting point. And people, like, they kind of forget, or, this is probably a problem that, like, guys like me in the hunting industry have created, where, like, it's like, you got to go find where that big one in the section, or the mature bucks live. And in my experience, they're with the other deer. Like, they just like, there's a reason those does are raising their fawns in this spot, and they're feeding here and they're bedding there. There's a reason that little 2.5-year-old walked through there. There's a reason those deer are in those spots. And so if you could start to just get on deer, especially on public land, you will get on big ones, or you'll get on deer that are good enough for you.
Yep.
The lesson is, and this is one of the things I love about seeing, like, the public land movement and seeing the hunting public guys out there and stuff, is like, people all over the country are seeing that there's quality deer in places that they would have swore they're not. And so when you think, like, on your, just like kind of what you said there, I don't care where you go. Like, I don't care what state you live in. I don't care how much pressure you have around your house, how horrible you think your state is. If you have a decent enough chunk of land, there's bucks that go through there that are going to make almost every bow hunter happy.
Yes.
And we always think, like, no, I got to get to this state or this place or this time frame to encounter them. I'm like, they're out there. They're all over. And we're not talking 200-inch bucks here. We're just talking, like, awesome 120, 130-inch deer. Like, they live out there in a lot of these places, and people don't think so.